So it seems like a real priority. Last week, the minister talked on this issue, and he said economic restructuring. And in COVID, the Prime Minister said this was an opportunity to reset and restructure the economy. That's what this is about.
Yeah.
So the honourable member will have 3.5 minutes. The honourable member will have 3.5 minutes after question period to answer questions and comments. And I do want to remind her that she's not to say indirectly or indirectly who may be in the House and who's not in the House. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Cape Breton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's with a heavy heart that I rise in the House today to pay tribute to Cape Breton's own Bruce Guthrow. Whether at home in Cape Breton or across the Atlantic with the Scottish band Runrig, Bruce was a shining star whose musical talent brought so much joy and comfort to so many. While some folks at home certainly knew of Bruce's health challenges, his recent passing nevertheless sent shockwaves to the riding of Cape Breton, Canso and beyond. Bruce was an incredible singer, songwriter, musician, and ambassador for all of Cape Breton and what we had to offer. And this was really reflected, Madam Speaker, in the beautiful send-off that so many watched via Facebook and other forms of media. In particular, I want to send a sincere condolence to Bruce's wife, Kim, and his children and their children, Jody and Dylan, at this difficult time. I will say this, Madam Speaker, Cape Breton Council will sorely miss Bruce Guthrow. Thank you.
Good job.
I do want to remind members that there is business going on, and for those who are coming in, to please keep the sound down. It's important that we hear what members have to say. The honourable member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Madam Speaker, fall is upon us, and in my rural Manitoba riding, farmers are wrapping up harvest with most crops safely in the bin. The fall calf run has started with roundup underway on our ranches, and commercial fishers are busy landing their catch on Lake Winnipeg. This should be a time of Thanksgiving, but sadly, Canadian farm, ranch, and commercial fishing families are being overtaxed and overregulated by this NDP Liberal government. This costly coalition is quadrupling the carbon tax, making it more expensive every time hardworking families fuel up their tractors, combines, trucks, and boats. These misinformed Liberals have unilaterally implemented draconian trucking and fertilizer regulations that will lower farm productivity and increase food insecurity. When you tax the people who grow the food and tax the people who truck the food, it costs us more to buy the food. After 8 long years, Canadians can't afford this Liberal mismanagement anymore. But better times are ahead. Soon there'll be great Thanksgiving and celebration across the land when we get rid of these out-of-touch Liberals and replace them with a common-sense Conservative government who will put Canadians first.
Yes, sir.
L'honorable député de Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake.
Madam Speaker, I stand today in the House to strongly encourage my Conservative colleagues to support Bill C-49, an important bill for Nova Scotia's future. The proposed amendments in the Atlantic Accord will create a framework for the offshore renewable energy sector under the Act for the province of Nova Scotia, with an estimated $1 trillion to be invested in the sector globally by 2040. It's crucial that Canada position itself to attract investment and become world leaders in clean energy. Despite having the longest coastline and best wind speed in the world, Canada does not have today one single commissioned offshore wind project to show today. Passing Bill C-49 will go a long ways towards meeting our emission targets, decarbonizing the power grid, and bring great jobs for Nova Scotians. Thank you.
The honourable member for Edmonton Griesbach.
To kill the Indian in the child. That was the goal of Canada's horrific residential schools. A brutal policy made in this place that stole thousands of children like my cookum Christina and subjected them to cruel torture and neglect that resulted in the serious trauma and death. Intergenerational trauma haunts families of residential school survivors today. And it is up to all of us to stand with them, to acknowledge our inheritance, and to ensure we end this ongoing genocide. Survivors have come forward and done the impossible. They have told their stories. reopened wounds, and shared with us solutions manifested in the 94 TRC calls to action. To date, we've only accomplished 13 of those calls to action. At this rate, it will take us till 2065 to accomplish all of them. Let us not repeat the mistakes of the past. Let us act diligently. Let us fulfill our country's promise of truth, of reparations, and then, and only then, Madam Speaker, will we have reconciliation.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize the opening this fall of a magnificent new building that will serve Kingston's Francophone community. On September 13th, our community held a grand opening ceremony for the building that will house the students of Kingston's two Francophone high schools, École secondaire publique Mille-Îles and École secondaire catholique Sainte-Marie-Rivière. The two schools have around 500 students, and their shared space highlights French language education in Kingston. The new facility unites our region's Francophone and Francophile community, providing an inclusive space to celebrate French learning, arts, and culture. Congratulations, and happy first year in your new premises.
Merci, Madame.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
This past summer, there was some real talent on the baseball diamonds in Bruce Grey, Owen Sound. Two softball teams from my hometown of Tara, Ontario, were crowned Canadian champions. The under-17 Tara Twins took the fast-pitch Canadian Championship tournament in Fredericton, New Brunswick by storm, winning the gold medal against the Plattsville Lightning. The under-15 Tara Longhorns headed to Prince Albert, Saskatchewan for their Canadian Championships, where they defeated the Newfoundland Selects to bring the gold medal back home to Tara, too. Tara was also honored to host the Under-13 Ontario Amateur Softball Association Provincial Championships. It was great to see so many keen baseball players from across Ontario make it out to our booming town. With all the visitors, I'm sure we even cracked 1,000 people that weekend, Madam Speaker. Finally, I want to take the time to thank all the coaches, parents, and volunteers involved in putting together a successful season for the Twins, Longhorns, and all the other local sports teams. Their efforts and tireless dedication to youth sports are critical in ensuring our youth live healthy and active lifestyles. Once again, congratulations and play ball.
Yes. The honourable member for Hamilton Mountain.
It's an honour to rise for the first time in this House as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth. And Speaker, our government does great work empowering our next generation of leaders through programs like Canada Summer Jobs, Youth Employment and Skills, and Canada Service Corps. Like many MPs, I spent this summer touring organizations and small businesses, meeting participants, and hearing about how many young people fruitfully employed on Hamilton Mountain today started their careers as summer students through federal programs in years past. In my constituency office, our summer leadership program participant, Sarfina, organized more than 30 engaged students to form a Hamilton Mountain Constituency Youth Council, which is working on a project to benefit the whole community. It's not just our youth who need these programs for a good start in life. The benefit is mutual. When young people apply their energy, ideas, and diverse skills to our businesses and organizations, our collective future is brighter.
The honourable member for Whitby.
Madam Speaker, I would like to start by taking this opportunity to recognize and appreciate our new police chief in Durham Region, Peter Morera. Earlier this month, I had the opportunity to attend the Durham Region Police Service's Youth in Policing Program graduation ceremony, where they recognized the remarkable achievements of 85 young graduates. You should have seen it, Madam Speaker. This diverse group of youth and their families from across Durham Region were beaming with pride and overflowing with self-expression after a challenging 8-week program where the youth overcame much, learned essential life skills, and demonstrated leadership through organizing projects that contributed positively to our community. These projects included organizing a youth soccer tournament, hosting a youth forum, and raising over $10,000 for the Hearth Place Cancer Support Center. I invite all members of this House to join me in sending the heartiest congratulations to the graduates on their achievements, and know that we anticipate truly great things from you in the future.
The honourable member for Haliburton, Kawathra Lake Brock.
Speaker, September 30th marks the day put aside to remember the tragedy of the residential school system, the unjust colonial practices in Canada's past, and the trauma and lost opportunities of generations of Indigenous peoples. It's crucial to understand that reconciliation is a path, a process that requires our sustained commitments and dedication. It begins with acknowledging the truth and the pain inflicted upon Indigenous peoples. And it continues with meaningful actions that address the ongoing disparities and inequities Indigenous peoples have faced for far too long. To truly honor the spirit of reconciliation, we must address this by creating equitable opportunities for Indigenous peoples in areas such as employment, education, entrepreneurship, and resource sharing. It means dismantling the barriers that have hindered economic progress for Indigenous communities and empowering them to shape their economic futures. Let us commit to Indigenous self-determination and prosperity and a more and just equitable future. Remember the past, honor the survivors, and commit ourselves to a future where reconciliation is not just a dream, but a reality for all.
Honourable member for the honourable member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Speaker, public safety is an issue that is important to each and every member of this House, and one of which I've heard about from my constituents. This is why I'm proud that our government is implementing reform to the bail system that will help keep repeat offenders off the street. Bill C-48, which passed this House last week and is moving swiftly through the Senate, creates a reverse onus for repeat offenders and those accused of crimes with a firearm and a knife. It examines the onus on those accused of intimate partner violence, and it requires the courts to consider whether an accused person has a history of convictions involving violence when making a bail order. This bill was crafted responsibly with input from all relevant stakeholders and has the support of provincial and territorial leaders. It sends a strong message that judges ought to seriously consider the public safety risks posed by repeat offenders at the bail stage. This bill is just one of a suite of measures that our government has introduced to protect the public from violent offenders and to ensure that people in the Sioux and all across this country are safe on the streets. Thank you very much, Speaker.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Madam Speaker, Quebecers have seen how bitter the Bloc Québécois leader has been over the past few days. He's called us scum, cockroaches, low-flying lobbyists. Those are the terms he's using, and it shows that the Bloc leader is at war, not against Conservatives, but against Quebecers who don't want to pay more for gas. Yesterday, we proposed a motion to scrap the increases to the carbon tax, to leave more money in the pockets of young Quebecers who are living from paycheck to paycheck. I'd like to finish off with a quote from the Conservative leader. He said, "I have a message for the Liberal Prime Minister and leader of the Bloc. The people of the regions and farmers need their trucks and energy for their daily lives. You're not allowed to take any more money out of their pockets. I'll scrap the Liberal Bloc tax and bring prices back down and put an end to the war against cars. It's common sense."
Key Liberal policies that censor Canadians and attack their basic freedoms. Whether it's the freedom to dream of a vibrant future, the freedom to watch the YouTube channel they wish to, or the freedom to access news online. The current federal government has exercised an inordinate amount of autocratic power for the last 8 years. But I'm encouraged by the growing number of Canadians who are dreaming of a better and more vibrant future, a future that only freedom can deliver. Imagine what Canada would look like if the Canadian people were put before government, and if attacks on personal liberties were relinquished, if hardworking people were freed up to earn powerful paychecks that would buy affordable gas, groceries, and homes. This is the type of Canada that we can create, and we can do so by generating opportunity for each and every person to reach their greatest potential.
Yes.
It's time to bring home freedom.
The honourable member for Hull-Elmer. Madam Speaker, today is National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Tomorrow we will gather on Algonquin and Anishinaabe unceded territory to mark the profound significance of this day as we come together to remember, reflect, and act together. But let's be clear. This isn't a conversation for one day. It's a call to become lifelong learners, constantly striving to understand the injuries of the past and their ongoing implications. This day invites us to dive deeper into the complex relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. It's an opportunity to learn, empathize, and grow together, today, tomorrow, and every day. Let's take a moment to think about the resilience of Indigenous communities. Let's commit to standing with them as we work together for a better future. Change begins with each one of us. Together, we can honor the strength and spirit of Indigenous communities, working for a Canada where reconciliation isn't just a word, it's a reality. Thank you, miigwech. I'd like to remind members in the House that if you would like to have conversations during statements, you should leave the chamber because there's a lot of noise and it's really a lack of respect for those who are making their statements.
Ça continue?
It's still happening? Excuse me? If you don't mind, please take your conversations outside.
L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Madam Speaker, this Saturday, September 30th, is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And in my community, on the homelands of the Lekwungen people, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, the second annual South Island Powwow will be taking place at Royal Athletic Park. The Songhees Nation is partnering with the City of Victoria to host this event to honor survivors and their families and to celebrate traditional Indigenous culture through song and dance. First Nations far and wide will be joining the Songhees Nation to celebrate in their time-honored powwow. Last year's powwow brought over 10,000 people to witness and participate and to stand together on Orange Shirt Day. Eddie Charlie and Kristen Spray, the organizers of Victoria Orange Shirt Day, will be there, and I want to thank Eddie for his tireless advocacy to make September 30th a national holiday. I'll be there at the South Island Powwow this weekend, but wherever you are, I hope you take the opportunity to remember the children who never came home, to recognize survivors and the intergenerational impacts of residential schools, and to honor the strength of Indigenous communities and the power of Indigenous culture.
The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, tomorrow, September 30th, is Truth and Reconciliation Day, a First Nations initiative to commemorate the painful history of residential schools and to remember all those who suffered the trauma that followed them all their lives, as well as all those children who never came home and their families. On this occasion, we're all invited to show our solidarity by wearing orange, which for Indigenous peoples symbolizes truth and healing. There's still work to be done to find out the truth about residential schools, but this is the first step. We need to know in order to understand the grave consequences of this programmed cultural dispossession which span generations. But time alone won't heal the wounds. We need concrete gestures of reconciliation towards First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. But only they can identify what those gestures should be. It's up to us to show the respect that has too often been lacking throughout our history. It's essential if we're to write the next chapter of history together.
L'honorable député de Caribou.
The Honourable Member for Caribou Prince George.
Chaos are running rampant on the streets of our country due to this Prime Minister's soft on crime approach. Nowhere is this more apparent than in my home province of British Columbia. The BC NDP, with the support of this NDP Liberal government, are now actively involved in the illegal drug trade. Overnight, we learned that the BC NDP are funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars to a group that buys drugs on the black market and then distributes them on the streets of my province. After 8 long years of this Prime Minister, this shocking story should come as no surprise. Rather than creating real solutions to the opioid and overdose crisis, the Prime Minister prefers to take the easy way out, to transfer Canadians' hard-earned money to illegal drug dealers instead. With overdoses now leading the cause of death among people aged 10 to 59 in our country, it's clear to Canadians that this Prime Minister is out of touch and just not worth the cost.
The Honourable Member for Sydney Victoria.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to reflect on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I cannot overstate the harms that the Indian residential school caused. In comparison, during World War II, 1 in 26 soldiers who went over to fight did not come home. In the Indian residential schools, 1 in 25 children did not come home. Those who came home struggled, many who lost language, culture, and family values. Madam Speaker, tomorrow I ask Canadians, if you meet a survivor, show kindness and compassion, because you don't know what they've been through. I think about so many members of my community and my family who went to the Shubenacadie Indian residential schools, and we have so much to work to do in this country, and we have so much to learn about our shared history. Tomorrow and every day after, let us walk the journey of reconciliation together. Thank you.
I'm going to allow the honourable member for Hall Elmer to redo his statement, because there was, between the official opposition and the government, there was conversations going right across from where he was speaking a while ago. So I will afford the honourable member for Hall Elmer to redo his statement.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. September 30th is National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Tomorrow, we will gather on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe to mark the profound significance of this day as we come together to remember, reflect, and act together. But let's be clear, Madam Speaker, this isn't a one-day conversation. It's a call to become lifelong learners, constantly striving to understand the wounds of the past and their ongoing implications. This day invites us to dive deeper into the complex relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. It's an opportunity to learn, empathize, and grow together. Today, tomorrow, and every day, let's take a moment to reflect on the resilience of Indigenous communities. Let's commit to standing with them as we work together for a better future. Change begins with each one of us. Together, we can honor the strength and spirit of Indigenous communities. Working for a Canada where reconciliation is not just a word, it's a reality. Thank you, miigwech.
And again, I just want to remind members that during statements, some of these statements are very emotional and touching, and so it's really important that when members come into the House that they keep their voices very low, and if they want to have conversations, to please take them outside, because everybody has the right to be to ensure that their statement isn't destroyed. So oral questions, questions orales. The honourable member for Thornhill.
Prime Minister says that it's not his job to control the inflationary spending or the out-of-control cost of living or the sky-high interest rates that he has caused. He says it's not his job to bring down the price of gas, groceries, or home heating. Instead, he's raising the carbon tax. And he says it's not his job to take personal responsibility for our diplomatic relations or to vet the people who come in contact with a wartime leader. He says housing is not his job either. Well, the housing crisis is getting worse. If it's not his job to do anything, any of these things, what is his job?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I find it rather rich, Madam Speaker, with all due respect to the member, when that party's leader of the opposition, a responsibility to put forward constructive policy, when he was in opposition, in government, as minister responsible for housing, put forward a plan, $300 million, less than 100 homes built. His plan on housing today is full of holes. He taxed builders, for example. Nothing will get built under his watch, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The honourable for Thornhill.
Madam Speaker, they spent almost $90 billion to double the price of a home, to double the price of rent, to double the price of a mortgage. In Toronto, it now takes 80% of what Canadians take home to keep a roof over their head. More liberal spending equals higher inflation, which leads to higher interest rates, which leads to higher mortgages. So how many Canadians have to be in jeopardy of losing their homes before the Liberals stop spending, stop raising taxes, and actually start building homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, Canadians are having a difficult time. That's why during the pandemic we put forward emergency programs that sustain the economy, individuals and families, when that party didn't want to do any of those things. Today we see a government that's put forward a plan to get more homes built. How? In partnership with provinces, with municipalities. That's how we're going to get things done. Not by measures on the other side that instill nothing but fear in the wider Canadian economy and the wider Canadian society. That's not responsible leadership, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Home building is actually down just because they have a fancy program or a new acronym every month. It doesn't mean that any of this is working.
Right.
The government had a plan in 2015 to build housing on surplus land. Do you know how many homes they've built since 2015? 13. That's less than 2 a year. Liberal MPs have flipped more houses than that since 2015. It's been 8 years. We need shovels in the ground and not pies in the sky. So will they finally support a common sense conservative plan to actually build homes Canadians can afford?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Common sense. It's a shame she wasn't at yesterday's Finance Committee, Madam Speaker, where witnesses from the Ministry of Finance confirmed that if their idea for housing was to be put in place, less homes would be built compared to our particular plan. It's a plan that takes taxes off. The GST comes off, for example. That incents greater building, Madam Speaker. Combine that with the approach they've taken to municipalities, to provinces, when it comes to ending things like exclusionary zoning. We want to work with those municipalities. We're doing that through the Housing Accelerator Fund. That will continue. The result will be 200,000 to 300,000 homes built as a result.
The Député de Louis Saint-Laurent.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Madam Speaker, 5 long days, for 5 days, the Prime Minister brought the Nazi scandal to headlines all over the world. He hid for 5 days, and he allowed Canada's reputation to be dragged through the mud. When a country is humiliated like this, it is up to the leader of the government to protect its reputation. But what did this Liberal Prime Minister do? He hid. Why?
L'Honorable Ministre de Sécurité Publique.
The Minister of Public Safety? Oh, no, that's not quite right. But thank you, Madam Speaker. The former Speaker of the House, as my colleague knows very well, has clearly stated that he was the only person responsible for having invited this person to the House and for recognizing him. It was his initiative, and no other parliamentarian or the government was involved or informed. The former Speaker invited his own guests for the speech on Friday, and they were chosen by him and his own office. As soon as we learned about this horrible event that occurred in the House, the Prime Minister recognized that it was very painful for all Canadians and all those who have suffered due to the Holocaust. The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, Quebecers are struggling. We learned in the Journal de Montréal that according to a survey, 51% of young Quebecers are living from paycheck to paycheck. And that's not good for anyone, because when youth is traumatized, well, the entire future is at stake for Canada and Quebec. During this difficult time for our youth, what is the genius idea of this Liberal government supported by the Bloc Québécois? Inventing a second carbon tax. Voting for the Bloc has a price. Why does the Liberal Bloc think that this is a good idea to grab even more money out of the pockets of young Quebecers and to levy a second carbon tax? The Honourable Minister of Transport. My colleague wants to talk about costs. How much does it cost when our forests burn, when our lakes and rivers flood? How much does destroyed infrastructure cost? What about the price on our children's health when they breathe dirty air? What does that cost? Clearly, we don't have the means to put up with a conservative government. Madam Speaker, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions did not go down last year. Instead, they grew by 2.1%. That's what we've heard from the Climate Institute of Canada. And that's almost entirely due to one sector, where the 5 biggest companies brought in $200 billion in profit last year. A sector that has received billions of dollars in subsidies to pollute less, but it's actually increasing Canada's emissions. And what sector is that? Well, it's oil and gas, of course. When will the government stop filling their pockets with public money? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for her question, and I have great news for her. Canada is the first country in the G20 to eliminate subsidies to the oil and gas sector. We're the first country to have done that 2 years before the deadline in 2025. We did that this year, and we are going to eliminate public funding to fossil fuels, and we are the only G20 country to have made that commitment. Canada is fighting climate change, and it's working. We have the best record of any country in the G7 from 2019 and 2021 out of all countries in the G7 for reducing emissions. The Honourable Member, Madam Speaker, 2.1% increase in greenhouse gas emissions due to the oil and gas sector, but the government isn't turning the screws on the sector. Instead, it's giving them more money. Last week, it announced that it wanted to double oil production off Newfoundland. These companies are increasing all of Canada's emissions, but the federal government is actually making it easier for them to pollute even more instead of doing the opposite. When will this government stop being part of the problem? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would invite my honourable colleague to read our plan to fight climate change, which environmentalists, scientists, municipalities, the City of Montreal, and many others have all said is a great plan, which shows that, like all other sectors in Canada, the oil and gas sector will have to do its fair share. And that is why we already have a regulation that will reduce methane emissions by at least 40% by 2025. And that is a very serious type of emission. And we also have the Clean Fuel Standard to force gas and diesel producers to reduce the impact.
Madam Speaker, it pains me to say that Saskatchewan has one of the highest rates of child poverty in the country. But instead of ensuring they don't go hungry, the Conservative government of Saskatchewan wants to use the notwithstanding clause to save a policy a judge would said it was causing irreparable harm. Is that what Conservatives stand for, dividing people and trampling on human rights? That doesn't sound like common sense to me. Now, will the government do everything they can to stop the harm against Canadian children?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for this very important question. We're fully aware of the Government of Saskatchewan's proposed use of the notwithstanding clause. We are dead set against the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause in any circumstances. The notwithstanding clause is intended to protect minority rights, not suppress them. In light of the decision by the court of Saskatchewan yesterday, we would have thought that the Government of Saskatchewan would have taken a moment to pause, reflect, and wait until the process played itself out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
Homes are supposed to be where dreams are cultivated. For Inuit and Indigenous peoples, homes are overcrowded, molded, and spaces where dreams vanish. Children have no space to do homework. Women have no space to flee abusive partners. Inuit and Indigenous peoples have little to no space to take care of their mental well-being. This is the result of decades of Liberal and Conservative underfunding. When will the Liberals finally close this funding housing gap?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for her passion and for her question. And our government is fully aware that in order to advance reconciliation, we need to close the gap between Indigenous people and the rest of Canada, as well as address the harms that is caused through colonization and underfunding. Our government is committed to doing that. We have a tremendous ability and record of first in our country for Indigenous people. We'll continue to make those progress, and I thank the member, and I look forward to working with her on the INAN committee together to do so.
The Honourable Member for Lethbridge.
Well, just a week ago, under this Prime Minister's watch, a Nazi was welcomed in this place and actually honoured within this chamber. Now, when the Prime Minister should have been a statesman and taken full responsibility, instead he chose to flee and hide. Not just for 1 day, not just for 2 days, but actually for 5 days. For 5 days he was mute. For 5 days he watched as our reputation was tarnished. For 5 days he was in hiding. For 5 days he utterly embarrassed our country. The Prime Minister has yet to take responsibility. Will he stand up, do the brave thing, and do that today?
L'Honorable Ministre des Services Publics et de l'Approvisionnement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The former Speaker has made it very clear that he alone was responsible for inviting this individual to the House and recognizing him. It was his initiative, and no other parliamentarians nor the government were involved. The former Speaker invited his own guests for Friday's address, which were determined by him and his own office. No advance notice was provided to the Prime Minister's office nor to the Ukrainian delegation about the invitation or the recognition. There are many Canadians who are hurt by this, and this mistake has been especially difficult for Jewish, Ukrainian, and Eastern.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Member proves my point. It's the Prime Minister of Canada. He is meant to function as a statesman, to take personal responsibility when a mistake happens. Yeah. And yet, instead, he chose to flee. He chose to hide.
Cowardly.
Why? Why? Why not take personal responsibility? Why not remedy this on the world stage? Why not acknowledge the grave atrocities that have taken place in our history and the mistake that was made here in this House and the impact that that would have on Canadians? So I'll give him an opportunity today. Would he honorably stand up, take that personal responsibility, and apologize to Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, the former Speaker has made it very clear that he alone was responsible for inviting this individual to the House and recognizing him. It was his initiative, and no one in this House knew of that. The Prime Minister, the same day we learned of this horrendous incident that occurred in the House, the Prime Minister recognized on the same day that this was painful for Canadians and communities who were affected by the Holocaust.
The honourable member for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Thank you. Yesterday in the Finance Committee, this government's own department told the Finance Committee that in fact in 2018 they warned the Liberal government of an impending housing crisis, yet they did nothing. Incredibly, CMHC officials went on to say that the policies currently employed by the federal government are not sufficient to solve the housing problem. If in fact this government's own department doesn't believe in this Liberal government, why should Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministry of Infrastructure's Housing, Infrastructure and Communities. I knew there was one in there.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would remind my honourable colleague to look at the actual record and to look at the actions of that opposition leader who this summer, while presenting himself as some sort of champion of the working class, stood in front of a Canadian's home, took a video, and called that home a shack. If he is serious about dealing with affordability and the housing crisis and the supply crisis that underpins it, I want to hear from him and his party serious plans along the lines of what we've presented on this side. We're going to continue to fight for Canadians.
So I want to remind members, if they want to have conversations while answers and questions are being asked, they should take their conversations outside. The honourable member for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Madam Speaker, Canada's problems are real. We have incredible food bank usage. We have housing costs doubling. Millions of Canadians cannot afford their own homes, yet this side decides to play games. Back when the leader of the opposition was housing minister, housing was affordable in the country. So when will this government finally get serious, remove the gatekeepers, balance the budget so Canadians can keep their homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, he's quite correct. That side does play games. You know what else they do? They also vote against tax cuts for the middle class. They also vote against child care for kids. They vote against dental care for kids. Discussions of pharmacare are happening at this time. That side wants to entertain none of it. At a time when Canadians are facing real challenges of affordability, government can be there to help. This government has put serious measures on the table. It's having an effect. We're going to continue to do that. They should wake up and come to the party.
The honourable member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Madam Speaker, 97%. That's the share of income a household would need to cover home ownership costs now in Vancouver. This from a new RBC report, which says housing affordability in most major Canadian cities is near all-time worst levels. The Prime Minister also holds the all-time record for incurring more debt during his 8 years than all other Prime Ministers combined. Housing is less affordable than ever. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister finally stop his inflationary spending so Canadians can keep a roof over their head?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I remind the honourable member, Madam Speaker, that Canada has the lowest deficit and debt in the G7. But times remain hard. We see that. We understand that. On housing affordability, what are we doing? The supply crisis that underpins the housing crisis in front of the country is one that requires building. That's why we've lifted GST for the purposes of rental construction on apartments. That's why we've made changes to the borrowing limit of the Canada Mortgage Bond. I don't want to get into the technical details because they are vast. The result is more homes built for Canadians. That's what we're going to continue to do.
The honourable member for Colonial Lake Country.
Well, Madam Speaker, the OECD says in the G7 that Canada has the biggest gap between housing prices and Canadian wages. The finance minister said her plan to bring down inflation is working, and yet it has soared to 4%. Mortgage interest costs have also soared now to 31%. So it's no wonder Mortgage Pro's recent survey showed 48% of young people say they've given up on ever owning a home. Now, this NDP Liberal government spending is driving up inflation, which is driving up interest rates, which is driving up mortgage interest costs. Will the Prime Minister finally stop his inflationary spending so Canadians can keep a roof over their head?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
There we go again, Madam Speaker. The contradictions just speak for themselves, but I'll highlight them for you. In July of 2022, we had inflation at over 8%. That is now down to 4%. Certainly not low enough, but we see progress on that front, Madam Speaker. I also hear all sorts of ideas from the other side, Madam Speaker, that won't have a tangible impact in terms of affordability. Let's just take pensions, by the way. Yes. I've heard nothing from that side at all with respect to Premier Smith's pension plan that would deplete the fund by 53%. Combine that with their focus or lack of focus on EI, they voted against all these measures that will...
L'honorable député de Manicouagan.
The honourable member for Manicouagan. Madam Speaker, let's talk about Chalk River, a project to bury nuclear waste near the Outaouais River. The chiefs of several First Nations have joined their voices to a broad opposition movement in Quebec. They are concerned about the impact on the river. They are concerned that there will be a nuclear landfill near their sacred lands. They are concerned, but no one consulted them, which is a direct violation of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. When will this government finally listen to them and put an end to the Chalk River project?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, Canadians' health and safety, reconciliation, and protecting the environment are all major priorities. When it comes to our nuclear policy, the project is currently being reviewed by the Commission. And according to that review, all nuclear waste in Canada is being handled safely according to international standards in appropriate facilities, which are overseen by our world-class Nuclear Safety Commission. Thank you very much. The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, the first thing to do would be to at least give a minimum amount of respect to the concerns of First Nations. Chief Heyman from the Kipawek Nation has written to the Prime Minister and never got an answer. The federal government should at least pause the Chalk River project and ensure that First Nations are listened to. But at the very least, could Ottawa do the very minimum when it comes to a nation-to-nation relationship? It should at least respond to the letter from the Kipawek Nation.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much for the question.
Speaker, I acknowledge that we have work to do on this file. I know that this is something that might be coming before the INAN committee, but we look forward to hearing from the chiefs, hearing from the opposite member, and working with them to ensure that we're fulfilling our obligations under UNDRIP and our duty to consult. Thank you.
The Honourable Selkirk into Lake Eastman.
We learned yesterday these Liberals are cutting another $1 billion from our armed forces. This is in addition to the $2.5 billion they already let lapse last year. But the Prime Minister has no problem on wasting taxpayer money and running up massive deficits on things like the $160 million for McKinsey, $54 million on the ArriveCan app, $20 million bonuses on the Bank of Canada executives, and let's not forget they allowed $4.6 billion of abuse under their COVID programs. These Liberals waste money on just about everything except our military. Why does the Prime Minister only cut spending when it hurts our troops?
That's right.
The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
Madam Speaker, I think we all remember when the Conservatives set back defence capability by years when they reduced defence expenditures below 1% of our GDP. But, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, we are committed to the significant and strategic long-term investments that will ensure that CAF continues to function as an agile, combat-ready force, capable of making tangible contributions and delivering on our commitments. And at the same time, Madam Speaker, we must ensure that all expenditures are carefully controlled so that each dollar produces real value for Canadians. Thank you.
I would just ask members to keep their thoughts to themselves when they're not being recognized. The Honourable Member for Cariboo Prince George.
This Prime Minister is failing our most vulnerable of Canadians. Our country is gripped in the worst drug and crime crisis in generations. And last night we learned that this Prime Minister and the BC NDP are using taxpayer dollars to fund a group that buys drugs on the black market and then hands them out on the streets of Vancouver. We can't get people into recovery, but we can perpetuate their addiction and support organized crime. When will this Prime Minister put a stop to his failed drug policy and finally take real action and end this crisis?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, I don't think there's a single member of this House that doesn't mourn the tragic loss of anyone in this overdose crisis. But I have to say, Madam Speaker, to the member across the way, spreading misinformation about and conflating harm reduction and treatment loses lives rather than saving them. Madam Speaker, the provinces are responsible for providing safe supply, prescriptions, to clients who need help as they go through recovery. Madam Speaker, on this side of the House, we will continue to save lives. They should get on board with us with that, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member Sturgeon River Parkland.
Madam Speaker, after 8 years under this Liberal government, it's clear that the rights of victims and their families are not a priority. Correctional Services Canada, with the full knowledge of this government, transferred Canada's most notorious killer to a medium security prison. Public safety officials even wanted to keep it quiet, and victims' families were only notified after the fact. At committee, Conservatives are calling for this government to let victims' voices be heard, but the Liberals are refusing to allow it. Why is this Liberal government trying to cover up this outrageous affair, and why are they shamefully blocking the voices of victims from being heard?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, it's clear that member opposite is distancing himself from the truth once again. In fact, all members of the committee came together to bring forward.
I'm sorry.
You can't do. She accused him of lying.
So I think that, you know.
The previous minister did as well, frankly.
Order. Order. I think all members on all sides actually have used these things. So I just want to say I want to ask members to please be careful with their words, and you can't do indirectly what you can't do directly. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Madam Speaker, let me clarify the facts for the member opposite. What happened at Public Safety Committee was that all members of the committee came together to come forward to do a study on putting forward the rights of victims in crime, to look into how reclassifications are handled and how transfers are handled. And you know what happened, Madam Speaker? The Conservatives voted against it. They talk tough in front of the cameras, but when it comes to act, they do nothing.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Madam Speaker, after 8 years, the Liberals still don't seem to understand how to help our farmers, who are the ones who put food on our tables. With their partners in the Bloc Québécois, they seem to prefer forcing families into the street instead of getting rid of the carbon tax. In fact, they would like to see it radically increased. They are feeding the inflationary fire. They want to make the cost of living even higher. When you vote for the Bloc, you pay a high price. When will the Liberal Bloc coalition put an end to the infamous carbon tax and finally listen to our common sense Conservatives? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to remind my honourable colleague that federal carbon pricing does not apply in Quebec. Quebec, for many years, has had its own cap-and-trade system. I'd also like to remind my colleague that common sense is certainly not to ignore the impacts of climate change on our farmers throughout the country, especially in Quebec. I often meet farmers who are experiencing the impacts of climate change, drought, too much heat, not enough heat, pests. We haven't heard anything from the Conservatives about what they would do to help our farmers face these problems.
The Hamilton Community Foundation's Vital Signs report says that for every new unit of affordable housing built, Hamilton is losing 23 units. It also confirms what tenants have already always known, that corporate landlords are evicting tenants to jack up the rents at a record rate while leaving Hamiltonians out in the cold. This Liberal government is leaving people to fend for themselves while big developers are cashing in on what's left of our city's rental apartment buildings. So, Madam Speaker, will this government adopt our NDP affordable housing plan to create an acquisition fund to save the affordable rentals left in Hamilton?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Madam Speaker, I know that member has a passion for dealing with homelessness and addressing issues of affordability more generally. This government has put substantial investment forward through the National Housing Strategy to combat homelessness. It is a difficult challenge for sure, but one that we're getting results on. It's not over, that fight continues, and combined with efforts to build more, lifting GST from rental construction, for example, the changes to the Canada Mortgage Bond borrowing limit. All of these things combined, and the bottom line is we're going to see more homes built, and affordability is the result from that, Madam Speaker.
Member for Hamilton Centre.
Madam Speaker, maybe the honourable member heard my question, but clearly he wasn't listening. Because if he were, he would know that the winter months are approaching and that it's going to be life or death for the increasing number of people who are being left onto the streets to live in tent encampments. Cities like Hamilton are facing double-digit property tax increases in order to fill the crucial gaps in funding for social housing. In Hamilton, that's a 7-year wait list. This is life or death, Madam Speaker. So, will this government immediately respond to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities' demand for direct funding in order to repair existing social housing units in order to address our 7-year wait list?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we have been there for cities like Hamilton and other Canadian cities and towns through programs like Reaching Home, through the Rapid Housing Initiative, and in other ways to help not-for-profits that are on the ground doing the very hard work. I know that member cares obviously very much about this issue. I'm happy to have further discussions with him, but I go back to the point that we're going to advance issues around this by collaboration with the private sector, with the not-for-profit sector, with municipalities as well. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Northwest Territories.
Madam Speaker, tomorrow is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's a day that recognizes First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children who were separated from their families, their culture, and their communities. While the Leader of the Opposition fails to advance on Indigenous issues such as UNDRIP, which he voted against, our government will be there to work with Indigenous peoples. Can the Parliamentary Secretary of the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations update the House on our government's record on reconciliation?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Madam Speaker, when it comes to Indigenous issues, the record of the Leader of the Opposition is almost as shameful as his comments.
Order. Just want to remind members that we need to ensure that we have respect here in the House, and I know that the honourable members would like to hear the answers. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, when it comes to Indigenous issues, the shameful record of the Leader of the Opposition on his voting is almost as shameful as his words where he said, instead of compensation for abuses suffered at the Indian residential schools, that Aboriginals need to learn the value of hard work. In contrast, our government has a record of historical firsts, the passing UNDRIP into law, the first ever Indigenous Language Commissioner, the first ever Indigenous Governor General, the first ever Indigenous Supreme Court Justice. I'll stand on record on our historic firsts every day, including the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Again, there are some interruptions going on while members are speaking. Again, I would just ask members to please hold off to any questions they may have or thoughts. Order. 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 Again, if individuals want to have conversations, they should take them out. Order.
This is coming from a guy that called
Order.
Indigenous women crackers.
If this continues, someone's going to end up losing a question, so. Questions and comments? The honourable member for Bow River. Oh, sorry. Calgary Heritage.
8 long years of incompetent NDP Liberal government. Diplomatic disaster after diplomatic disaster. 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder rage across our streets. A carbon tax making gas, groceries, and home heating more expensive. A tax that does nothing to achieve climate targets. A tax inflating everything, devastating everyone. When will the Prime Minister finally axe the tax?
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, last week during the United Nations Climate Ambition Summit in New York, I was at an event with West Kelowna's Fire Chief Jason Brolin. Chief Brolin vividly described the trauma of fighting this summer's massive wildfires, of sending his team into danger, of fighting to protect homes and lives. It was a miracle that no one died in Kelowna. He called it a once-in-a-lifetime fire, but then told us it was the second once-in-a-lifetime fire he has faced in 20 years. That's the impacts of climate change, Madam Speaker.
Honourable for Bow River.
Madam, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Alberta farmers and families are paying more tax than ever. When you tax Stamp Seeds that grows the food, Reimer Trucking that ships the food, Gross Farms that processes the food, Sunterra Market who sells the food, you're taxing everyone who buys the food. This Prime Minister is just not worth it. Alberta farmers need to keep feeding the world. Will the Prime Minister axe his carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, we've seen the impact of climate change devastating provinces right across this country and impacting most significantly our farmers. In winter, we saw record cold temperatures leading to damaged homes, businesses, and crop results. Canadian farmers are on the front line of climate change, and that is exactly why, Madam Speaker, we're investing nearly $500 million in programs like the Agricultural Technology Program and the Climate Solutions Program, and we'll continue to do everything that is necessary to help our farmers deal with the increasing effects of climate change. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lisleck, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, the Bloc is doing its best to convince Quebecers that the carbon tax has no impact in Quebec. Nothing could be further from the truth. Everything that is transported from one province to another and ends up in our stores costs more because of this tax. Everything, including voting for the Bloc, is more expensive. After 8 years of this government, many Quebecers are feeling the pinch. Will this Prime Minister finally cancel this costly Bloc Liberal tax? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Madam Speaker, I find those attacks on the Bloc very mean. But if the Conservatives had any interest at all in the economy in Quebec, they would have highlighted the historic announcement yesterday. We're going to create 3,000 jobs. We're going to look to the future and produce the greenest batteries in the world, Madam Speaker. 3,000 direct jobs, many more indirect jobs, green batteries in cars around the world, and they're not even talking about it. That's what the Conservatives are about. They don't care about Quebec at all. The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lisleck, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, the Bloc said it wanted to radically increase the carbon tax, while the Liberals granted their wish. There's a second carbon tax that also applies in Quebec. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, it will add 17 cents to the price of a litre of gasoline. The Bloc Liberal Alliance is always looking to dig deeper into Quebecers' pockets. It doesn't make any sense, Madam Speaker. Will the Prime Minister put an end to his inflationary taxes? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Madam Speaker. In 2023, it's unbelievable and even immoral that a political party that wants to form the government has nothing to say about climate change. when tens of thousands of people were displaced this summer because of forest fires. We could smell the smoke in New York and even in Europe. And the official position of the Conservative Party of Canada was that climate change don't exist. When it costs tens of billions of dollars to Canadians, it's scandalous, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Madam Speaker, it's very concerning what Radio-Canada has revealed about the closeness between the big GMO companies and the federal government. They're so close that they play on the same team, dubbed the Tiger Team. A team of lobbyists from giants such as Bayer, but also federal officials who allegedly drafted the genome editing regulations together. It's worse than the fox in the henhouse. It's the fox in charge of the henhouse. Will the government mandate truly independent experts to re-examine all the regulatory changes made under the Tiger Team?
Minister for National Defence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we've had extensive consultations with people from the organic, conventional, and seed sectors to find new food production solutions to feed the world's growing population. It is common practice for the government to actively engage with implicated stakeholders when discussing regulatory matters. The Tiger Team process was intended as a time-limited mechanism through which multiple stakeholders in the grain supply chain would have an opportunity to provide their views on a very complex topic of plant breeding and innovation. And, Madam Speaker, we will continue doing all that we can to support Canada's farmers and farm families.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Madam Speaker, it makes no sense to let the people who make money from a product decide the rules that apply to their product. It's even worse when we're talking about food and people's health. How can we let a company like Bayer write the rules on GMOs and genome editing? We now need to reassure people there is a breach of trust. Only a rigorous review of the regulatory update by truly independent experts can repair this total lack of judgment on the part of the government. When will it launch this review? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank my honourable colleague for his question. This is why myself, the former Minister of Agriculture and Health, have worked together to put in place the reforms he's talking about. That's what led to the federal government's announcement that there will no longer be pesticides used on federal lands, which led to a review of the way we approve pesticides in Canada, and that we allow more independent scientists to look at the review of each of these pesticides. We are undertaking that review that the honourable colleague is asking us to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For Miramichi Grand Lake.
Madam Speaker, Atlantic Canadians are struggling to pay for their groceries, gas, and home heating. Meanwhile, the Atlantic Liberal MPs support measures to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Atlantic Liberal MPs have continued to support carbon taxes since 2015. Will the Atlantic Liberal MPs vote on the Conservative motion next week to axe the tax so Atlantic Canadians can afford gas, groceries, and home heating?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
For his important question. Madam Speaker, let's talk about what's important for Atlantic Canadian. Earlier this week, I stood here and listened to Conservative and Atlantic Conservative from Atlantic Canada vote and are voting against the Atlantic Accord that gives Canada an opportunity, gives Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador an opportunity to find prosperity and also meet our green goals. Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that they vote for the Atlantic Accord and those changes to help Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. Thank you.
The honourable member for Miramichi Grand Lake.
Madam Speaker, they've already ruined one tidal project, and I invite the member opposite to tell the people of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia choosing between fueling their car and purchasing groceries how the carbon tax is not punishing them every single day. Atlantic Liberal MPs allege they are not in favour of the carbon taxes while back home, but have supported it 23 times since 2015. Again, they claim that they now are against it. The carbon tax, will they put their money where their mouth is and vote next week to axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
I would like to remind my honourable colleague that his party campaigned on putting in place a price on pollution in Canada in the 2021 election. But what I find interesting, and I would like to pick on what my colleague was saying, why is the Conservative Party opposing the development of clean energy in Canada? Like the moratorium that Premier Smith has put in place in Alberta, which is putting at risk $30 billion of investment in renewable energy in the clean technology sector. Thousands of jobs are at risk. Will the Leader of the Opposition stand to this House, Madam Speaker, and explain to us whether or not he supports clean energy or not?
Yes, I know the honourable members there. I just want to remind members to please keep the tone down when someone else has the floor. The honourable member for Regina, Wisconsin.
Madam Speaker, according to Food Banks Canada, nearly 7 million Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. That's because farmers pay the carbon tax on the food they grow. Truckers pay the carbon tax on the food they transport. Grocers pay the carbon tax on the food they refrigerate. And all of those carbon taxes get passed on to the consumer. Madam Speaker, will this Liberal NDP government cancel its plan to increase its inflationary carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister.
Fire Chief Brolin of West Kelowna said another thing that stuck with me. He said Kelowna spent more than $20 million battling the summer's wildfires, and that insurance losses would triple that amount. What could we have accomplished if we'd used the same amount of money proactively, Chief Brolin asked. He said money spent fighting fires was spent on the wrong end of the problem. And he said that at an event in support of carbon pricing, Madam Speaker, a proven policy designed to reduce emissions that are driving climate change and more intense wildfires and floodings all across our nation and all across the world.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in our hearts and minds, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation reminds us to reflect on the consequences of colonialism on Indigenous people. It's an opportunity for Canadians to reflect on the tragic history of the residential school system. This day honors the children who never returned home. Can the Minister share some of the ways that we will be marking this day? The Honourable Minister of Heritage Canada. I thank my colleague from Châteauguay-Lacolle for her question. Listening to Indigenous voices and amplifying them is a way to mark the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. On Wednesday, I had the opportunity to participate in the viewing of Bones of Crows, a series produced by Mary Clemens with Indigenous actors that tells us about the history of residential schools and how the Cree people and others contributed to our common history. The partnership with CBC allows the voices of Indigenous people to be heard so that together we can honor truth and create spaces for healing.
The honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Ranchers know that their herds are crucial to our grasslands, environment, food security and trade. Saskatchewan livestock producers also know that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. His inflationary policies and stifling carbon taxes are crippling our producers. They're stressed, winter is coming, and they need to keep their breeding herds alive. Time is running out. When will this NDP Liberal government provide its share of ag recovery funding? When?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Yeah, I want to thank the member opposite for the question. And I want to agree with her that Canadian farmers produce some of the highest quality agricultural products around the world. And that's one of the reasons our government, alongside our provinces and territories, are investing $3.5 billion in the next 5 years through new sustainable Canadian agricultural partnerships. We've also invested nearly $2 billion in supply-managed farmers and processors, as well as $500 million in environmental programs like the Agricultural Clean Technology Program and the Climate Solutions Program. And, Madam Speaker, I want to assure the member opposite and all members of this House that we'll continue to do everything that is necessary to support the important work of our Canadian farmers.
The Honourable Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, for 3 years, the residents of Bobcaygeon have been waiting for repairs of the Lock 32 swing bridge. The lack of action from Parks Canada has left the town angry and frustrated. precious tourist dollars have left along with several businesses who just can't wait anymore. While the minister responsible is busy gifting millions to bolster infrastructure in communist China, he ignores the pleas of rural Canadians. If the minister is too busy supporting the Communist Party in Beijing, will he please hand this file over to someone who can do the job?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would actually take issue with the fact that the member is accusing one of the most respected institutions in our country, Parks Canada, of not doing its job. They are one of the most liked institution, most trusted institution in Canada. I will work with the officials of Parks Canada to ensure that this issue is dealt with in the most rapid possible terms. Thank you.
Member Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Thank you, Speaker. I was actually saying the minister can't do his job because not only one bridge is out, one federal bridge, a second bridge, the village of Bolsover, 3 years and counting, no bridge. There's actually a documented case where someone died of a heart attack. The family could see the ambulance on the other side of the road because it could not get over. Wow. 3 years, 2 bridges, 2 communities cut in half. When will the minister do his job and get these bridges fixed?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I said, I will be talking with Parks officials to ensure that these problems are solved as quickly as possible. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton East, Stony Creek.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This weekend, Canadians in my riding of Hamilton East, Stony Creek and across the country will honour the victims and survivors of the residential school system as we seek to address the harmful legacy of residential schools and reflect on our own commitment to reconciliation. For generations, Indigenous peoples have kept their culture and language, showing great resilience in the face of discrimination and mistreatment by colonial systems. Canada has a responsibility to address the truth and support their healing. Madam Speaker, in my community, people want to know how our government is working towards truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples.
Good question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for that very important question. And I'm grateful to see Canadians across the country finding their own special ways to commemorate this important day. Let me be clear. As a government, we believe that truth and reconciliation need to be at the heart of absolutely everything that we do, and we are committed to doing the work. After Harper refused for years, we launched the inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Today, more than 96% of First Nations have access to clean drinking water, with a pathway for the remaining 4%. After decades of neglect, we have helped communities build, renovate, and retrofit 31,000 homes and counting. We will continue working with Indigenous peoples to build a new relationship based on recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership, and that's reconciliation. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Speaker, Canadians are putting their heart and soul into creating content for this entire country and the world to enjoy. And on TikTok, they're left out of their creator fund to be paid for their work. It's unfair. TikTok compensates its creators in the United States and Europe, but Canadians are left behind. Why are the Liberals allowing this abuse? These content creators are workers. They deserve to be paid. Madam Speaker, worker rights is my Roman Empire. So will this government start working for young people, ensure Canadian content creators are compensated fairly?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, our government is proud to support our creators all over the country. They're amongst the best in the world. Absolutely. They are sharing our stories, every Canadian stories, and it's really important that we keep on supporting them. This is why we brought forward the Bill C-11, and through this new bill, we're going to bring in new revenue so that we can better support our creators in Canada. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to raise the concern of the lawyers representing the Sequatlam First Nation. Just in time for National Day of Reconciliation, we're violating, and I say we, because thanks to the Liberals, we own the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We are violating a sacred commitment made to that First Nation. Their lawyer has asked for this, that at least before they start construction on October 2nd, the Canadian Energy Regulator provide reasons so this First Nation can pursue its legal rights of appeal. Will the government ensure construction doesn't begin until reasons are provided?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much, and I know this issue matters a great deal to our colleague. I will point out, however, and as the Minister of Finance said earlier this week, it's an independent decision that was reached by an independent agency. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
On appelle au règlement l'honorable député de Louis Saint.
On a point of order, the honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Madam Speaker, during statements
There's a code of conduct in this House, and from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to apologize to the member for Hull Aylmer, who I interrupted during his wonderful statement. I appreciate that. I appreciate the honourable member's apology. I know it wasn't just him, but I do appreciate his honesty.
Points of order, the honourable member for Lakeland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is with a heavy heart that I just want to rise to address an exchange stemming from question period. I am a descendant of the Bear family from the Broken Head Ojibwe First Nation in Manitoba, so I raise this with grave concern and seriousness. The Prime Minister's pick for the Parliamentary Secretary for Crown Indigenous Relations, who mischaracterized our leader earlier in question period and was focusing on words, actually said, "Why do I assume every skinny Aboriginal girl is on crystal meth or pills? Hashtag too much APTN." I would beg all members of Parliament here to treat the issues, particularly of deep concern to Indigenous Canadians in every corner of their country, and all of us who are descended from them, and non-Indigenous Canadians who are treaty partners, to take these issues seriously with the gravity that they deserve and stop this name-calling, impugning motives, and mischaracterizations of words. These topics deserve this seriousness. That's why Harper's Conservative government apologized for residential schools and launched Truth and Reconciliation.
I think we're getting more into points of debate. I would just say that, I don't have all of the context from the honourable member. I didn't hear all of the statement that she made. I didn't hear that during question period as far as for the statements that she had made, or the specific language used. So I would tend to think that that's more a point of debate. I have another point of order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to table the documents that the Leader of the Opposition made when he was a Member of Parliament here. When he talked about his view was that instead of compensation, the actual word from the Leader of the Opposition was, "My view is that we need to engender the value..."
I'm sorry. All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. There's no...
Point of order.
Point of order. The honourable member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Coming out of question period, comments from the member from Sydney, Victoria. Just like to table a unanimous consent to table this document, reminding Canadians that during the first Truth and Reconciliation Day, the Prime Minister spent it surfing in Tofino.
I've already getting some no's, but I'll ask the question. All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. We don't have unanimous consent. I have a point of order here from the honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I do want to say, Madam Speaker, to thank you for your valiant efforts today maintaining order through the question period. Et aussi un grand merci à le député.
And also a huge shout out to the member for Louis Saint Laurent for his apologies. He's a model for everyone to follow.
Speaker, it can be taken up later. And I know that if I heard it clearly, it may end up in Hansard. It wasn't something said by the honourable member for Lethbridge, but it was while she had the floor, a male voice was heard quite clearly saying the word cowardly. I think it may end up in Hansard unless someone attends to it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It's not something that I have heard. I'm sure that we can double check the records and come back to the House if need be. The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre has a point of order.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Certainly emotions run high here. We're debating. On September 30th, it's the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and I find it really abhorrent that we're using this time when we're supposed to be lifting up survivors to get into petty political arguments on the backs of survivors. So I would like this to, I'm encouraging members to stop this behavior. Thank you.
I appreciate the point of order that was raised. Again, I think it falls on debates, but I do want to remind everyone that we should be respectful of each other in the House. There's ways to debate. are different points of views, and we have to also be mindful of the occasion that we are going to be marking. The honourable member for Caribou Prince George has also a point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise with heavy heart as well, too. As many know, my family is First Nations as well. And Madam Speaker, the comments that came from the member from Sydney, Victoria, on a day before Truth and Reconciliation Day is indeed damaging, Madam Speaker. And I remind this House that not only did the member from Sydney, Victoria use disparaging remarks towards Indigenous women prior to his elected life, but our Prime Minister also heckled Indigenous protesters and thanked them for their donation. And Madam Speaker, through you, I ask for unanimous support to table a document that highlights that our Prime Minister thanked Indigenous protesters for their donation when they were protesting his inability to cure or to fight the potable water situation on our First Nations communities throughout our country. And Speaker, this is shameless. And through you, I seek unanimous support to table this document. Thank you.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. There's no unanimous consent. We have one more point of order. The honourable member for Lakeland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Also, as a person who wrote my undergraduate honours thesis 21 years ago about harm and responsibility in the residential school system and called for apology and compensation from government, among many other measures, I forgot when you allowed me the time earlier to actually ask for unanimous consent to table the documents that show the Prime Minister's pick for Indigenous Crown relations, that show him making misogynist and anti-Indigenous comments. And from the comment from our colleague, who talked about how she's urging people to not make political points. I agree, that's the point of me rising, and I hope I'm taken in good faith for that principle, and she should definitely talk to her Liberal Cabinet Minister colleagues.
I just want to remind members, if they're going to be wanting tabling a report or tabling a document, I don't know that they have to go into in-depth detail about what the document is, but I do want to ask the members, all those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. No, we don't have unanimous consent. We have one more point of order. The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
I'm very saddened, Madam Speaker, by what is occurring. Again, I'm going to urge all parliamentarians, if they have any level of decency, to stop using residential school survivors for political gains. This is inappropriate and it's violent. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Again, I appreciate all of the points of orders that have been made. I think, again, I think that I want to say that if members could please be very respectful in the languages that they use, that would actually allow the House to function much better. Orders of the day. Oh, sorry. Yes, let me put my glasses on. Tabling of documents. Introduction of government bills. Déclaration de ministre. Rapport de délégation interparlementaire. Présentation de rapport de comité. Introduction of private members' bills. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions. Présentation de pétitions. The honourable member for Hull-Aylmer.
La présidente, c'est mon devoir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of Canadians, and especially postdoctoral researchers and graduate students, I'd like to present this petition, which asks the government to increase the value of grants given by